Chapter 13. Stumbling and gasping for breath, Mike ran the direction Mr. Friedrich had taken the night before. When he reached the woods, he flung himself face down on the ground and lay without moving until his breathing had slowed and the pain was gone from his chest. He managed to climb to his feet, but his knees shook as he slowly walked into the woods, carefully searching the ground, praying he wouldn't find what he was looking for. He parted a stand of small hickory trees and stepped through, discovering at his feet a tangle of twigs and brush that had been spread over the ground. He knelt to brush them aside and found a rectangle of tamped-down earth that recently had been spade. Mike crumpled to the ground in despair and cried for his friend Reuben until all the tears were gone and his body shard with dry sobs. Finally, he sat up, rubbing tears and dirt from his face from the sleeves of his jacket. What should he do? Who could help him? Ma, she was too far away. Frances, she had told him, if you ever need me, I'll come. There's no quick way he could reach Frances. Now that this had happened, would Mr. Friedrich ever let him try to reach his family again? No one can help me, he whispered. As Mike tried to fight his feelings of hopelessness, Megan's voice came to his mind as clearly as though she were near him. You have no proof, Mike. You don't know enough about what's happened. It's not fair to Mr. Friedrich to jump to such conclusions. Mike nodded. That was true. He must ask careful questions. He must wait and watch. At the first clang of the bell that signaled the new meal, Mike shivered. How could he return to the house and face Mr. Friedrich? It was easy to imagine how angry Mr. Friedrich would be if Mike were late, so he dusted himself off and raced back. Mr. Friedrich was still in a terrible mood. He gulped great bites of food, muttered between mouthfuls about the problem of trying to find an extra farmhand. Winter approached and not many men will be out looking for jobs, he complained. You'll find someone. Mrs. Friedrich was obviously trying to calm. Maybe when we go to St. Joe for supplies. Until then, Papa Mike could do Reuben's jobs, Gunter spoke between mouthfuls. Reuben trained Mike, didn't he? Mike should earn his keep. Mike found the courage to ask, why did Reuben leave? Mr. Friedrich scowled at Mike and replied, because he was an ungrateful, deceitful wretch. Mike choked back angry words and tried to remain calm. Where did he go? He asked. How should we know? Mr. Friedrich shouted. No more talking about Reuben, Mrs. Friedrich begged. Let's be silent and finish our meal. Mike tried to eat, but he couldn't. This time not even Mrs. Friedrich seemed to notice. He was thankful, and Mr. Friedrich heaved himself to his feet, and they all could leave the table. As usual, Gunter followed his father to avoid helping. Before Mrs. Friedrich could leave the room, however, Mike touched her arm. He glanced toward the door to make sure Mr. Friedrich was not within earshot and whispered, Please tell me what you know about Reuben. He's gone, that's all I know, Mrs. Friedrich murmured. Don't talk about him again. But I need to know what happened to him, Mike stammered. In a rush, the words came out. We were chums. I know he wouldn't have left without saying goodbye to me. Mrs. Friedrich, her eyes also on the door, took Mike's hand and bent to whisper to him. Reuben was rude to Mr. Friedrich. He spoke back to him. He lied to him. Without a word of apology, he packed his belongings and left. His behavior shocked us all. Reuben wouldn't lie, and I can't believe he'd be rude. Hans told me himself, Mrs. Friedrich said. Reuben wasn't the kind who would walk away in the middle of the night without goodbye to anyone, Mike said. People are not always who or what they seem, she said so quietly that Mike was sure she was hiding something. I know that Reuben wouldn't have left like that, Mike said. He would have waited and said goodbye to me. Mrs. Friedrich touched her arm with his fingertips, and for a moment her face softened. I'm sorry, Michael, she said. Now please do not ask any more questions. You're only causing trouble. Mike gulped against the tightness of his throat and picked up the flour to carry to the kitchen. Whether Mrs. Friedrich was trying to deceive him or she thought she was telling the truth, Mike didn't know. She might have been repeating the explanation her husband had given her, but it didn't matter. Reuben's book of poems wedged behind the tool chest, and it didn't explain the newly turned earth hidden in the woods. He had no chance to talk to Marta until that evening after supper. Come outside with me, he whispered. She nodded and grabbed her shawl and hurried out to the back door. And when they reached a safe distance from the house, Mike stopped and Marta held out a hand with an eager smile on her face. You have a note from Corey? No, Mike said. I haven't seen him since he was here yesterday. Marta's shoulders slumped. Then why'd you bring me out here in the cold? To ask you about Reuben, he said. What would I know about Reuben? The room he slept in is bare. Did you clean it? Did you see anything he might have left behind? That's a strange question. It's something I need to know. Did you look in the cupboard? Were any of his clothes there? Marta gave an impatient sigh and answered, I cleaned his room and gathered the quilts and linens from his bed to wash them. And yes, I dusted out the cupboard. Believe me, if Reuben had left any of his possessions, I would have found them. Didn't he say goodbye to you? No, she said. A small wrinkle appeared between her eyebrows. I wish he had, because I would have thanked him for holding his tongue about Corey coming to call. Suddenly her eyes became soft in sympathy and she reached for Mike's hand. Oh, she said, you're hurt because he didn't tell you he was going. How do you know he left? Mike asked. How? Because Mr. Friedrich told me he was gone. What do you mean? Did you see or hear him leave? She shrugged. No, but that's because I'm a sound sleeper. Don't you think it's strange he left in the middle of the night? Mara began to look uncomfortable and shifted from one foot to the other. I think you should know the truth, she said. But don't let on that I told you. Reuben didn't leave because he wanted to go. Mrs. Friedrich admitted to me that Mr. Friedrich was so angry with Reuben he sent him away. Would Reuben have left without his book of poems? Mike asked. At this, Marta smiled. Of course not. I sometimes thought that book was attached to the man's left hand. Mike hesitated. He didn't know how much to tell Marta. If he showed her the book and told her about the newly dug spot in the woods, what would she do? He had to know how she would react before he could explain. "I'm afraid for you," he said. Her eyes widened. "What do you mean by that?" Mike clutched her arm and pulled her down so he could whisper in her ear. "On the way to church, Mr. and Mrs. Friedrich were talking about you. I don't understand all they said, but they were worried about your loyalty to them." Marta straightened up with a snap, nearly knocking Mike off his feet. "Oh, they were they? I'm telling you that Mrs. Friedrich said that she had talked to you, and there's nothing, and that was all that could be done. But Mr. Friedrich said no, there was something else he could do." "Oh, I'm sure he thinks there is," she said, her words so angry they sparked like coals. "Marta," Mike said, "does this have something to do with Ulrich?" "Yes," she said, "it most certainly does." "Did you know Ulrich? Were you there when—" Marta's face was flushed with anger as she snapped, "Did I know Ulrich?" Her laugh was so brittle and hard that Mike shuddered. "Unfortunately," she answered, "I was Ulrich's wife." Before Mike could close his gaping mouth, Marta had run ahead of him into the house. All week, Mike felt as though he were living inside a nightmare. Marta refused to answer his questions, hushing him and sending him away with bits of urgent whispered conversations, shivering through the house like lost ghosts. Slowly, Mr. Friedrich's anger seeped away, but he was often deep in thought. What's he seeing inside his mind, Mike wondered, remembering the angry words in the shovel. As Mr. Friedrich's anger abated, Mrs. Friedrich began to relax. Michael, why do you not eat?" she asked at nearly every meal. "I thought you liked the dishes I made." "I do," Mike answered. He made a valiant effort to clean his plate, but he swallowed each bite with difficulty. At night he lay awake, sorting over the little he had learned. At times he convinced himself that Reuben had simply packed his things and left, as Mr. Friedrich ordered him to do, but at other times deep shadows slithered through his thoughts, and he shivered with fear, knowing for a certainty that Reuben's body lay buried in the woods. Sometimes in his dreams he saw Reuben's face so clearly he tried to reach out to him, but the face always disappeared, and Mike awoke whimpering with fear. Early Friday morning, Mike was more exhausted than usual as he rested his head against the warm flanks of the cow he was milking. He wondered how he would last through the day. And then Mr. Friedrich announced, "We've begun our chores early because we're going to St. Joseph today." "St. Joseph?" Mike jumped with such eagerness the cow turned to stare at him and switched her tail in his direction. Catherine Banks was in St. Joe. He'd find a chance to tell Mrs. Banks all that had happened. He knew she'd listen to what he had to say. "Will I go too?" Mike asked, barely able to breathe until he heard the answer. Mr. Friedrich studied him for a moment before he said, "If your work is finished in time, you may go." "Could I mail my letters there?" "I've already told you I would mail them for you." Having heard the touch of impatience in Mr. Friedrich's voice, Mike said no more. He gave a sharp watch on Gunter, afraid that Gunter might have planned some way to keep him from going to St. Joe. Every now and then Mike found Gunter sneaking quick looks at him, a nasty smile flickering on his lips. But after a hearty breakfast, the family piled into the wagon, and Mike again alone in the wagon bed, with only Reuben's book of poems in his pocket for company. "Doesn't Marta want to go with us?" he asked. "Marta has her duties here," Mrs. Friedrich answered. Would Marta see Corey again, Mike wondered? Would she decide to leave the Friedrichs? It'd be terrible to lose another friend. Then no one would take his side. He'd miss Marta, but he also hoped for her sake that she'd go. Mike was so eager to get to St. Joe that the ride seemed to take twice as long as it should, but soon he could see the clusters of houses and the taller buildings rose above the treetops. He clung to the edge of the wagon, watching the people in other wagons, the horseback riders, the foot traffic in the streets as they rode into town, and he jumped to his feet when Mr. Friedrich pulled his team to a halt in front of the bank's general store. Mike saw Mr. Amos Crandon just entering the store and shivered. No, forget Mr. Crandon. This was Mrs. Banks' store, and Mike could hardly wait to greet her. Catherine Banks saw Mike at the same time he found her, and she hurried around the corner to sweep him up in a big hug. She stooped and held his face in her hands. "How are you, Mike? How's everything going for you?" Mike couldn't answer. He just dove into her, tightly wrapping his arms around her waist. She ruffled his hair. "I have something for you, Mike. A letter from Frances Mary." "Grand," he said. They gasped at the twinkle in Catherine's eyes. "You know?" he asked. Her secret was discovered. "She's happily back to being a girl," she said. "Come with me. I'll give you her letter, and you let her explain." "I have something to tell you," he said, as she handed him a letter. "Something private." A customer called to her. "I can't find the bolt of cotton sateen." And before she turned to help, Catherine said to Mike, "We'll make some private time to talk. Just give me a few minutes." Mike found a quiet place on the floor between the tables piled with bolts of cloth and hats and furs and read his letter from Frances over and over again. He gobbled her words as though he were starving and they were food. Oh, how desperately he missed his brothers and sisters. Mike finally realized someone was standing over him and looked up to see Gunter. "Go away," Mike told him. "Papa wants you," Gunter said. "Better hurry or he'll be angry." With a sigh, Mike tucked the letter into his coat pocket and scrambled to his feet. He tried to go down the narrow aisle, but Gunter squeezed into him, roughly shoving him backward. "What's the matter with you?" Mike demanded. Gunter turned and said, "Papa's at the counter," and then backed off and ran ahead of Mike toward his father. As Mike joined them, Gunter tugged at his father's sleeve. "Papa," he pointed at Mike, "I saw him steal a knife, a fine, large pocket knife." Everyone in the store stopped and stared at Mike. "I didn't steal a knife," Mike insisted. "I didn't steal anything. Look in his pocket." His left coat pocket, Gunter shouted. Mr. Friedrich, his face dark with anger, grabbed Mike's arm in one hand and dove into his pocket with the other. He pulled out a slender pocket knife, its blade encased in a sheath of steel. Mr. Crandon stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Didn't I say so?" he asked as the people around him. "Once a thief, always a thief. The boy has proven me right." Sick with misery, Mike realized that Gunter had figured out how Mike had switched Mr. Friedrich's gold watch and had tried the switch himself with a knife. "I should have thought about that when he shoved into me," he thought. "I should have kept my wits about me and suspected what he'd do." Mike looked from face to face, crying out, "Gunter put the knife in my pocket." "Lies! More lies!" Mr. Friedrich thundered. Mr. Crandon nodded. "Michael Kelly's a thief and a liar." "I have a pocket knife of my own. I wouldn't take another," Mike shouted. "Be quiet," Mr. Friedrich ordered. "We don't want to hear anything more from you. A pickpocket. Once and always, I should not have tried to reclaim you. You belong back in New York and in prison." As Mr. Friedrich began to drag Mike through the store to the wagon, Catherine Banks cried out, "Wait, let Mike explain." But Mr. Friedrich shouted at Mike, "What else have you stolen? What else might be in your pockets?" Mike twisted around trying to break Mr. Friedrich's painful grip and shouted at him, "Reuben Starkey's book is in my pocket. The book you tried to hide after you killed him."